While Russian propaganda mocks the fact that Putin's occupiers are destroying Ukraine's energy infrastructure and leaving peaceful Ukrainian cities without electricity and heating. In Russia's Belgorod region, they have announced an evacuation, and not just any evacuation, but a mass evacuation of residents. The governor of the Russian border region, Vyacheslav Gladkov, stated that residents of the Belgorod region who have been left without electricity and heating after strikes on energy facilities should urgently relocate to other regions. Since the authorities are unable to restore the energy supply, and in fact don't really want to, this same Gladkov stated that there is, quote, an almost catastrophic situation with the energy supply in the region. He said that, quote, everything is running entirely on backup generators. It is impossible to restore the supply of electricity to residential buildings and industrial enterprises. That's why almost 1.5 million residents of the region would be better off leaving wherever they can. And Gladkov also stated that internal enemies and provocateurs are to blame for everything. What's happening in Belgorod? Let's talk about it this episode. My name is Pechiy. Let's discuss this topic together. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, give it a like, write any comment under this episode, and be sure to subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pechiy News. The link is in this video's description. And if you find this episode useful and interesting, at the end of the episode, you can support the work of this YouTube channel with your donation or a paid sponsorship subscription using the links and details provided. In the description of this video, it says, support Pechiy's channel. Choose any format that's convenient for you. I will be grateful for any support you provide. Residents of Belgorod in the Russian Federation, left without electricity and heat after Ukrainian strikes on energy facilities, should relocate to other Russian regions. Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov made this recommendation. I'll quote him now. If possible, let's move, let's take our children to relatives where there is heat and electricity. If that's not possible, then we are, as always, nearby. You know, this reminds me of a quote from Dmitry Medvedev, Russia's chief drunkard. He once visited Crimea and said, "There's no money, but hang in there." It's similar to Gladkov saying, "If you can move, do. If not, we're nearby." Moving on. He says that if heat and electricity are lost, we will transport people to those municipalities that are able to accommodate such a number of people, or move them to other regions. He added that Belgorod Oblast is facing problems with electricity supply on this scale for the first time since the beginning of Russia's war against Ukraine. Let me remind you that on January 9, a missile strike was carried out on the Storozhevaya substation and the combined heat and power plant. As a result, more than 550,000 residents of the region were left without electricity and heating, and about 200,000 more lost access to water. The Russians claimed that the armed forces of Ukraine allegedly struck energy facilities in the Belgorod region using high-mobility artillery rocket system, multiple launch rocket systems. Out of the 14 missiles launched, only 6 were shot down and 8 still hit their targets. During the strike on the Luch combined heat and power, a fire broke out and a transformer burned down. At the Belgorod combined heat and power, a pipeline, a transformer and an administrative building were damaged. Due to the shelling, the Belgorod 330 kV substation caught fire. It was left without power, along with 18 substations of 110 kV and 10 substations of 35 kV. As a result, Governor Gladkov stated that the authorities cannot cope with all of this, and frankly, they don't really want to. Well, who cares? Just some unwashed people. Russians lost power and heat? Are you sure you think I'm exaggerating here? Well, listen further. Gladkov stated that Russian police in the Belgorod region will start searching for so-called provocateurs. Among those dissatisfied with the authorities' response to power outages caused by Ukrainian attacks, Gladkov gave instructions to conduct appropriate monitoring of the region's residents. Next, I'll share a long quote from Gladkov that I suggest you listen to closely. So, Gladkov says, "Every difficult situation provokes aggression from our enemies, the enemies of the state, who are outside. We see increasing information attacks from the Ukrainian side, and we see that there are also attacks from internal enemies. The information collected by the authorities about attempts to create social tension will be passed on to Russian law enforcement so that they can hold the involved individuals administratively and criminally responsible. Provocateurs are trying to stir up a wave of discontent, especially in an extremely difficult situation when the loss of energy facilities due to shelling has reached almost catastrophic proportions. We have never experienced problems of this scale before. Power outages could affect the entire Belgorod region, which is 1.5 million people. People are already struggling. Besides problems from shelling, falling temperatures, and snow, others come and make things worse. Of course, people start getting even more upset without thinking about the consequences. This is what the governor of Belgorod Oblast says directly to Russians. I'll rephrase and explain this long quote from Belgorod Oblast Governor Gladkov. Russians have started complaining that because of the bloody, unprovoked war they themselves started against Ukraine, missiles have begun to land on their heads. Russians have started complaining that before they used to mock Ukrainians for being without electricity, but now they themselves are without power. They used to mock Ukrainians for lacking electricity and heat, but now they're without them too. But here's the problem. In Ukraine, the energy infrastructure is being restored and repaired. Meanwhile, Russians have just been told to find salvation on their own. They say you should leave since the authorities won't fix anything. Gladkov said, "We have no backup capacity. What do you want from us?" And now these Russians have started to complain, saying their authorities don't care about them. Listen, they're asking what's going on. The power plant was hit, there's no heating, no electricity, and the authorities aren't doing anything. In response, these very authorities, represented by Gladkov, come out and say, "Listen, you unwashed Russians, if you open your dirty mouths, the security forces will come and punish you. Russians, at any moment you can be declared a provocateur and an internal enemy. And that's it. Off to jail. I'll add that myself, Russians." I know that you still watch my episodes. You spit your dirty saliva in the comments. But you still come and watch my episodes. So, Russians, when you finally realize that you are just cattle to your authorities, they are telling you directly, "Listen, pack your things and leave. If you can't, it's your problem. If you protest, you go to jail." And here's another interesting and characteristic trait of Russians. The governor of Belgorod region, Gladkov, directly stated that Russians are stupid, as he said, quote, "Despite the warnings and door-to-door visits, many homeowners did not buy generators in advance, hoping they'd get lucky and the trouble would pass them by the very next day." This same Gladkov complained that Russians are not involved enough in the situation and are in no hurry to help even their neighbors. Quote from Gladkov. "Many people think this definitely won't affect us, but the truth is our people have already been impacted." That's why we start explaining again, for example, about the procedure for connecting and operating generators. It's interesting that Gladkov doesn't consider that most Russians can't afford this generator. Starting January 1, they increased taxes for Russians, with the unwashed value-added tax pay more for this war that left you without electricity. And Gladkov says, "What, are you stupid? You still haven't bought generators?" A Russian in a remote area asks, "Why should I buy it?" Gladkov replies, "If you don't, you're a provocateur, then security forces will come. But that's not all yet." Russians care so little for each other that they're willing to abandon their own. You know, I kept wondering why Russians care so little about this insane number of people killed in Ukraine, Ivanov, and I found an explanation on a basic, everyday level. It's reported that in Belgorod most stores have simply closed, but large shopping centers and especially chain stores that operate all over Russia have decided that if there's no electricity for normal operations in the Belgorod region, it's better to just shut down their business there. They don't care if Belgorod residents lose their stores. It has gotten to the point where Governor Gladkov is threatening to file a complaint with the prosecutor's office against chain stores for simply shutting down their operations in the region and being ready to leave completely. There's no electricity, so we'll do business in Moscow, St. Petersburg, or elsewhere. Does that mean Belgorod residents have no stores? Well, that's your problem, the chain stores told Gladkov. If we can't profit from the people in Belgorod, we don't care what happens to them. Let them starve, it's not our concern, we're just doing business. Meanwhile, Russian propaganda is going all out, telling everyone how Kiev will soon freeze after Russian strikes. These Russian Vankas and Mashkas watch television saying, "Yeah, Kiev will freeze soon," yet they're unaware of what's happening in their own Belgorod region. But Russians, if you were even a little bit reasonable, you would know that the first law of karma says you reap what you sow. So the time for harvest has come, not respected. I'll add an ellipsis here. Subscribe to the channel. Write your opinion and conclusions about this story in the comments. And don't forget to support this channel with your donation, of course, if this episode was useful and interesting for you. That's all for now. Take care. Goodbye.